Hey everybody, just wanted to get on here and do a quick update to the previous GME video that I made last week. If you haven't seen that, I'll link it below in the comments. Definitely need to watch that one first to understand this one. But just wanted to give a general update, as you know, didn't want to leave anyone hanging in suspense. So, of course, we spoke about this whole GME move, how it started, what to expect next, and we showed how when price broke above the daily trigger here, see trigger D, that's trigger daily. Price broke above the daily trigger. There's really nice upwards acceleration, and the triggers are acceleration levels, so that's normally what you'd see. And then when price broke above the weekly trigger, again, another strong burst of acceleration, pulled back. The hourly trigger is very strong here, as you can see by the shaded region, so price was able to catch support. A couple of attempts to break into this negative monthly velocity, which is this purple shaded area, which indicates resistance of the monthly trigger. We had 2 failed attempts here, another 2 failed attempts, another failed attempt, another failed attempt, another failed attempt. Price finally drifted down to the hourly trigger. And again, you can see the shaded region indicates that the hourly trigger is going to provide support, which it did. And then, towards the end of the day today, once GME got that bullish 1-minute trigger, 5-minute trigger crossover right here, it was able to explode, 15% or so to the upside. And that's why, these bullish trigger crosses are going to help a lot for GME. You can see had another one here and exploded really strongly to the upside. Another 11% move. And then we had another one down here. Again, exploded to the upside for another 16% move. So GME is making some pretty ridiculous moves on even 1-minute trigger, 5-minute trigger crossovers. Normally it takes GME breaking above a huge trigger like the daily trigger or the weekly trigger to make these kind of moves. Now it's doing it by a simple bullish 1-minute trigger, 5-minute trigger crossover. But the update that I wanted to give is that originally, we spoke about how it is, in my opinion, unlikely for GME to be able to get above the monthly trigger in the month of May due to how negative the monthly velocity is. It indicates that sellers will start showing up in this shaded region, which we have been seeing over the past week, and an unlikeliness that price will be able to break above. And I still kind of keep that same opinion that it'll be unlikely for price to break above the monthly trigger in the month of May. What I spoke about in the previous video was that as long as we can see anything like this, 1 second, it's just showcasing the previous weekly trigger rejections. Get those out of the way. What I spoke about in the video was that for GME to really start to break out and to really start to, ignite a short squeeze, we would just want to see GME be able to stay in this range, anywhere in this range by the end of May, so a little bit further down. And if GME can do that, then by the time we hit July, by the time we hit June, which is right here, the negative monthly velocity that you see here will be a lot weaker and will open the door for price to break above the monthly trigger. I gave the example of the daily trigger down here, where you could see by the shaded region that the daily trigger had really strong negative velocity, which caused a rejection the first time price attempted to break above. But then you could see that the shaded region around the daily trigger subsided greatly because price was able to hold below it. And once the negative daily velocity receded completely and there's no more shaded region at the daily trigger, price was able to break above and accelerate. And so I believe we're saying the same thing here, just on a larger time frame, where it's going to be really tough for price to break above the monthly trigger here with all this negative monthly velocity, but the price action that GME is going through right now is extremely constructive for the coming month of June and July and August, the rest of the summer, because as long as GME can remain within this range, it's looking very likely that for the next month or the month after that, the negative monthly velocity will greatly recede at the monthly trigger, opening the door for price to break above the monthly trigger. And we spoke about how when price breaks above the monthly trigger, that's where we would expect the next squeeze higher to start. Just like we saw in the past, where I would say GME is probably in a similar area as it was right here back in September 2020, where we saw GME attempt to break into the monthly trigger, and because monthly velocity was really strong, it was rejected, but because it stayed in this region, you were able to see the negative monthly velocity on the monthly trigger vastly subside from the month before to the next month, allowing GME to break above the monthly trigger. And once that happened at $2, everybody knows what happened next. We also had similar way back in 2013 where, again, GME tried to break above the monthly trigger, and because negative monthly velocity was strong, it was rejected, pulled back to the daily trigger, and then you could see that month after that, there was no more negative monthly velocity. There's no more shaded region at the monthly trigger. Price was able to break above and move from $5 all the way up to almost $15, tripling in price. So you can see that with every attempt to break above the monthly trigger, the first time is usually rejection, as that's where shorts are really holding their battleground. Pull back to the daily trigger, followed by a breakout above the monthly trigger when the negative monthly velocity is not strong anymore. We had it in 2013. We had it again, the exact same setup here in 2020. Rejection of the monthly trigger, pulled back, negative monthly velocity gets weaker and weaker, allowing for price to break above. And it's starting to look to me like we'll have something very similar for this move. So again, continuing with what we wrote last time, I don't think that price will be able to get above the monthly trigger for the month of May due to how strong negative monthly velocity is. You can see the daily trigger starting to climb here. What we can see is something like this. The daily trigger continues to make progress, like so. And then we can see price either reject here, pull back, maybe reject a little later, bounce off the daily trigger, and then in the month of June, be able to erupt right above that monthly trigger. So that's what I'll continue to look out for. Again, just wanted to come here and update my thoughts because I did a video last week and I didn't want to just leave it as a one-time video. Figured I'd give an update in case anybody was interested in understanding maybe a little bit more about the system or just interested in an update. So again, very constructive price action that GME is doing right now. As long as it can remain in this range close to the monthly trigger for the rest of the month of May, negative monthly velocity will recede for the coming month, and that will allow price to break above the monthly trigger, possibly in the month of June. And if GME does reject it and backtest the daily trigger, it'll look exactly the same as the past two of the biggest moves that GME had, which were rejection of the monthly trigger, pull back to the daily trigger, and then get that breakout, which will ignite a short squeeze.